Shalom, shalom, Israel. If everybody can hear me all right, get a one in the chat. Y'all can hear me all right if I can get a one in the chat. All right, the water. Shalom, we are the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, started out of 1 West 125th Street in Harlem, New York, under Commanding General Yohana. And we are not affiliated with any other Israelite or Christian group. Tonight is the Virginia history class. And as you all can see by the title, we are going to get into some history on the 4th of July, some of which you will probably be familiar with, others you may not. We're going to go back into the history and show how some things transpired and what led up to some of the things that you are probably very familiar with. Before I get into that, I got to give a shout out to Officer Shapat Dayak out of the DC school. He hooked me up with this awesome headband. So shout out to that brother. He did an excellent job, and I highly recommend anybody if you look for a headband from the brother. He did an awesome job. So the water again for that show. Okay, the water. All right. So we're gonna get into some of this. Y'all know we enjoy the participation here, so I appreciate y'all already being in, already signing in. Make sure you sign in with your name, city and state, so we can get attendance. Now I'm gonna try if Officer Yagadar has sent me the correct instructions. The water to the sister too. I appreciate it. I'm gonna try to share. Well, before I get into that, so I just ask some general questions. So we're gonna get into some of the different, like I said, some of the different history. But a lot of this is gonna come from. Let me see if I'm. Nah, I don't want to do that. A lot of this is gonna come from a piece, a speech that was given in 1852, and it was about the 4th of July and how it, what the association was for most Black people at the time. Now, I've given that much. Who's familiar with Frederick Douglass's speech that he gave? It actually was, I believe, on July 5th in 1852. Kanala, yes or no? Who is familiar with that speech? Who is familiar with that speech? Okay, the sister Carletta says she does not know about that. No problem. We're gonna get you informed this evening, sis. No sweat. Anyone else? Anyone else? Come on, Freddie Douglass. Come on, Freddie Douglass, as Officer Yagadar put it. Freddie Douglass. All right. So he's familiar with the speech that he gave. Okay. So we're gonna get into it. Oh, Salaki, you know I didn't even give my shout outs. I didn't say it. I'm starting off all messed up. Salaki, let me get back. I want to say Shalom, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shabbat Katham to the brothers Yahweh Shamar Al Thun by Hashem Yahweh Shah to the sisters. We're going to do our shout outs real quick. We got Sister Tawana in the building. We got Officer Yagadar in the building. We got the Sister Carletta in the building. And we got Trooper Kazaki in the building. All right. The water for everybody. Okay, so we're going to get into it. So basically, Frederick Douglass was asked to come give a speech. Now, about the 4th of July. Now you got it. So Frederick Douglass, he as a person is a little, it's a little, I won't say controversial, but it's interesting, right? Because most people think Frederick Douglass was a black man, was an Israelite, as we would call him. Who has heard this and thinks this today in the class? Who has been told that Frederick Douglass was a black man? We know that he was born into slavery. We know that and we may not know, he was born into slavery. He eventually escaped and started, he wrote a ton of books and started getting a lot of recognition for his work as, working against the institution of slavery. But what's interesting about him is that his father was a white man. His father was one of our oppressors. His father was actually a slave owner and I believe his mother was one of the slaves on the plantation. And that so his I want to be clear that Officer Mataza Akora is not endorsing Frederick Douglass as an Israelite. I'm not saying he has any authority on the Bible. He does not have any of that, although we're going to get into some references that he made. But even a broken clock is right twice a day. Okay. And so what he did, Khan, right, you were taught that he was black, but he was a devil. Exactly. He's an absolute oppressor. That's what his father was. And so we know biblically that's what he was. But again, this is not what's taught. And again, even a broken clock is right twice a day. And he was right in a lot of what he said, what we're going to get into. I just want to be clear that, again, Officer Mataza Akora is not saying that Frederick Douglass is any type of Israelite. He is not a brother. He is not an authority in any way, shape, or form. He just had a speech that where he said a lot of right things. Now, in that same speech, he said a lot of wrong things. One of the things that he said in the speech that we're going to get into, because they asked him to speak, again, this was 1852. I want to say this was the 76th anniversary of the so-called 4th of July. And part of his speech was about how young the nation was at the time and how, not that he was given a complete pass for slavery, but it was, the tone was very, well, you're in your adolescence, and I'm glad you're in your adolescence because you got a lot of growing to do. But that gives a certain pass. Almost saying, well, you're conducting, you're still dealing with slavery, but it's because you're young. These were not young men. This was not a young mentality. This was a very thought out approach and institution, and they knew exactly what they were doing. So that's what I mean when I say he said a lot of good things. He said a lot of things that weren't so good. All right. We're just going to focus on the good things tonight. All right. Because again, right. Exactly. Yeah. You say you heard about it, but he's eating my exactly. So who's familiar with the speech that he gave? I know Sister Carletta says she does not know about that speech. Does anybody else? Is anybody else familiar with the speech that he gave and the things that were said? Kind of like. Is anybody familiar with it? Let's see. Yagadar says he quoted the Bible to plead for compassion, but also held the other founding devils in high esteem. Yes, that was one thing that he absolutely did. He had a very, I don't even want to say interesting. He had the same type of tone and relationship with this wicked kingdom that a lot of these men who come along in an attempt to save us do. MLK was the same thing. He talked a little bit of trash, not that much. And again, he used the Bible to plead for compassion and all of that. But he still held this wicked kingdom in a high esteem. A lot of these leaders that have come along have done the same thing. There's this duality to their approach that doesn't make sense. That's why it's important for our people, Blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians, to get into the ISUPK under Command and General Yohana, because there is no contradiction under Command and General Yohana. There is no contradiction with the things that we learn and we teach in this school. It's very, very simple. The Bible is for Blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians. So-called Blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians. Our oppressor is the devil that the Bible speaks of. It's very simple. It's very simple. There's not a whole lot of back and forth. And part of that back and forth, and we've talked about it many times, but part of that back and forth is Christianity. Because Christianity and Caesar Borgia and giving us this image of a God who is not us but looks exactly like our oppressor is all part of the mental breakdown and destruction of our people. And so all of these leaders, all of them have this strange confliction, this strange duality where they want to kind of hold them accountable, but then kind of give them a pass and kind of beg for them to be merciful and still say they're wonderful. I mean, it's the most amazing confusion that has almost ever existed. Jose Agudar said he called the founding fathers peaceful patriots, right? And we know definitely now, if you want to call them patriots, sure, they're patriots to their country, sure, I give them that. They are far from peaceful. That has not been their MO ever, either back then or right now. They are not peaceful in any way, shape, or form. And again, they were not peaceful when 9/11 happened and they went over to the Middle East and Afghanistan and bombed millions of people. There was no peace there. There was no peace there. There was no peace at all. They were not peaceful when they took, we're going to get into some of this, but when they took our ancestors and our forefathers and absolutely raped and destroyed them, pillaged them. They were not peaceful when they destroyed our communities all across this country, even after slavery. They were not peaceful when we were being openly lynched all across this country. When they were making events of it. They were having children come and watch us as they completely lynched us. That was not peaceful. They were not peaceful even after the so-called Civil Rights Act. And now we are gunned down in the streets for any and every reason that they can come up with. And most often they go straight home. The only thing that has changed, halfway changed recently, is the fact that we got cameras everywhere. Thank the Most High for that technology. But that's the only thing that's changed a little bit. And they're still violent. So peaceful is definitely not something that this wicked oppressor is in any way, shape, or form. All right. So we're gonna get into it a little bit. I'm gonna try to share this screen, Officer Yagadar. We're gonna see what happens. Let's see. Shout out to Officer Yagadar for getting me the specifics I needed last week. I've been playing with it. I think we're gonna get it. All right, let me see. There we go. I think we got it. All right. So I just have certain sections of it highlighted, and we're gonna go over it. Like I said, there's a lot here. You can see this. The thing is 27 pages long, and again, there's a lot here that I would call good. There's a lot here that's not. There's more that's I would say that's not good than good, but the ones that are solid, I think it's worth us hearing what someone who considered themselves to be an Israelite, considered themselves, well, not necessarily an Israelite, what we would call an Israelite today, but he considered himself to be a black man. So I think it's interesting to see what his, it's important to see what even his perspective was. Now, we know he was not an Israelite. We know he was not a black man, but he understood himself to be, and he attempted to address the things that our people were going through. So as you can say, he says, I'm not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary, talking about the 4th of July. He says, your Independence Day only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. That's all it did. Shout out to Sister Anon in the building. Says it just, your independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessing in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. Meaning you all are having this wonderful celebration. You all are having this wonderful celebration. But everybody doesn't get that. Oh, Salakia. I'm messing up. Everybody is not enjoying that. It's just your people. It's just your people, right? I'm messing up. Salakia. I'm not sure if y'all can see all those changes. Hopefully not. Says the blessing in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not me. So he's making it clear, and this is a relatively early part of his speech, but he's making it real clear. Listen, all this wonderful stuff that y'all are partaking of right now, this is only for you. It's not for blacks in this country. This is for you. Now, mind you, today, everybody celebrates the 4th of July. I still, to this day, am shocked when I hear, black people, Latinos, or Native Indians talking about they're going to watch fireworks for the 4th of July. When they're talking the week before it comes, hey, what you doing for the 4th? Nothing. That is not our holiday. That is not our tradition. That's their tradition. And it should be. It should be. It's their independence from what they consider to be oppression. Now, that's the crazy thing about it, too. So who can tell me what the Revolutionary War was fought over? Who's familiar with it? Who's familiar with what led up predominantly to the Revolutionary War? What led up to them writing the Declaration of Independence at all? Give Officer Yagadar a hand. Taxes. It's just about taxes. Because long story short, what you had was they had to pay taxes back to the monarchy, the king, queen, whatever, back in Britain, right? But they didn't have any type of representation in the governing body. So think about it like if you had to pay taxes, but you didn't have anybody to represent anybody from the state of Virginia in Congress. It was that type of situation. And because they didn't have anybody to represent them, but they had to keep paying taxes, they got upset. And we all know what Esau does when he gets upset. Somebody got to go. Somebody got to go. So we're gonna write this Declaration of Independence. We no longer messing with y'all. We good. Now, why were they so good? Why did they have to pay taxes? Why did they have to pay so many taxes? Who can connect those dots for me? Officer Urash Shamath in the building. How about you now? Shema thought. Because you're talking about like, what was it, the early 1600s when they first, Columbus first came over, and then, you know, that's when the migration, immigration, whatever you want to call it, started, right? So you're talking about 1770s, less than 200 years later, they're on some, we're good. We're good. Y'all can leave us alone. We no longer want to be tied to you all. Why was that? How was that? That in such a relatively short period of time, you had a country that could declare its independence from its parent country. Think economics. Think what could lead, how could a country develop its economy at such a pace that it can now cut its ties to the parent country. Who want to give it a shot? Who wants to give it a shot? So y'all get down. They're making all that money off us as slaves. The free labor. The free labor catapulted this country. It catapulted this country in a way that has rarely been seen before. You're talking about, I mean, you're talking about folks came over here and a relatively short time period later, hey, listen, we have built ourselves up in a way that we no longer need you. We no longer need your support. We're good to go. That you don't have that without having slaves. You don't have that without the enslavement of blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. You just don't have it. It doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. If you have to pay your people actual wages to build up your country, that is a slow process. But when you have this free labor to do so, sure, I don't mind paying the taxes on it until I decide I don't want to pay taxes on it anymore. And when that happens, Esau said, okay, I'm done. I'm done. We don't all want to be part of y'all. All right. So from their perspective, though, this is justice. This is liberty. This is prosperity. This is independence that they were given by their fathers. Their fathers went to war for their independence, justice, liberty, all that wonderful stuff. And so this is something to be celebrated if you are Esau. If you are our oppressor, celebrating 4th of July makes absolute sense. But as it says here, it makes absolutely no sense to us because that was not shared by us. He goes on, it says, this 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters unto the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems, joyous anthems were inhuman mockery of sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? Again, a broken clock is right twice a day. I like how he said what he said. Because remember, he thought he was a black man. So how dare you come ask me to speak on your holiday when there are black people all across this country who are still enslaved? We're going to skip down. And this is where kind of the meat of what he said lies. See, Agada said, now we look at it as a privilege to celebrate our own slavery. Exactly. Exactly. We look at it as a privilege to celebrate someone else's freedom, someone else's liberation, another nation's liberties and freedoms when that same nation held us captive at the time. Now we look at it as a privilege. Matter of fact, and we get, as a people, we get our folks, especially once you come into the truth, we get your folks to try to play you too. So this scripture is Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. It says, beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of this world, and not after Christ. So the scripture is saying, beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy. We all know, listen, especially the Christian church, especially the Christian pastor, they will philosophize, or however it's said, on everything in the Bible and be absolutely wrong. They will absolutely make up this wonderful breakdown that makes absolutely no sense because the Lord put it on their heart and the Lord told them, and so on and so forth. They'll do that and lead our people, as they continue to do, down the wrong path, away from the Most High, away from the scriptures, away from the statutes and commandments. Vain deceit. Listen, once you continue to tell your family and friends that you don't celebrate these holidays, then you hear them start saying stuff like, well, I don't really celebrate it either. It's just a time, that's convenient for everybody to get together. It's convenient for, to have a cookout because, everybody's off, so on and so forth. It's a vain deceit because you're lying to my face when you tell me that you're celebrating these holidays. You are absolutely lying to me, but you want me to believe that it's not, so that I can go ahead and break the law, statutes, and commandments along with you. That's what we have to be mindful of, even with our people, even with our family and friends. I don't know how many of y'all have experienced, but I've had to catch this type of vain deceit more than once. And it can be a little tricky because as Israelites in ISUPK, we don't celebrate these holidays. So it can be easy to forget when they even are. Till you get a phone call asking, from your homeboy, you want to come over and have a drink on some random day of the week. Sure, I might come kick it with you. Wait a minute. What day is it? You trying to get me to come over there for 4th of July? You trying to get me to come over there for Easter? What are you trying to get me to do, man? Is it your birthday? These are vain deceits that we have to be very, very mindful of. So we don't allow any man to spoil us. And it also says, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world. Obviously, the traditions of man, look, 4th of July is an absolute tradition that they just decided they were going to keep. They decided they were going to celebrate. Again, as they should. But it's not even like in the ISUPK, we celebrate the most high holy Salaki, the high holy days that the Most High instructed us to celebrate and keep. We all know Christianity is an absolute pagan holiday. So most of their holidays are surrounding some other god that they're worshiping. Well, 4th of July is just, it's just a tradition. Hey, we did a great thing. We free. We're gonna celebrate this every year. That's your tradition. That's our precious tradition. You do that. But that's how wicked this kingdom is. And that's why it's called Babylon, because the attempt is to merge every nation. That's not what's supposed to happen. We are supposed to be separate. The Most High separated the nations for a reason. We are supposed to be separate. But now, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, Juneteenth is everybody's holiday now. It's actually the oppressor's holiday now. This is how wicked this kingdom is. They celebrate Juneteenth and 4th of July. They celebrate 4th of July when you had enslaved people, enslaved Israelites. And then they'll turn around and make the time that you're free, that they decided, okay, we're going to free them, which was still not free. Don't get it twisted. But now you're no longer in hard bondage unless you commit a crime. So we're going to celebrate that too. That's absolutely why this place is Babylon. Rudiments of the world. Rudiments of the world, those small things that, they're not even big deals. At least they aren't to the world. That's why when people, you hear people, when we tell people we don't eat certain things, shrimp, pork, crab, lobster, those are rudiment things there. Ain't even a big deal. I've heard people say, I don't understand why you think your diet is going to come into account when you go see God. Well, because he told me in the Bible, that's why. Because he instructed us in the Bible, that's why. But to the world, it's no big deal. It used to be being attracted to underage people sexually was not a rudiment thing. But that seems to be changing. That's why we have all these euphemisms now. MAP and MSM, I think it is, and all this. They're slowly making these things more and more acceptable so that they can be they're just not big deals. It used to be, if you were a young man born into this world and you had male body parts, then you were just a boy that would grow into a man eventually. It used to be if you were a child that was born with feminine body part or female body parts, then you were just a girl who would grow into a woman eventually. Now, I think Officer Yagadah did a class that's over 100 different genders. Now, if you feel like you're something other than you are, you can go get some work done at the hospital, and now all of a sudden you're something else. And it's over time, it's becoming less and less of a big deal. It's just accepted. These are the rudiments of the world that we are not supposed to be following at. These things that are flippant to this oppressor. It says, and not after Christ, meaning don't allow all of these things to, don't follow these things, and then you'll get spoiled and won't follow after Christ. You'll get spoiled and won't understand that you're not supposed to partake in these holidays and traditions. You'll get spoiled and listen to that vain deceit when somebody says, "Oh, I don't really celebrate it. We're not really celebrating Easter. We're not really celebrating 4th of July. We're just gonna get together and cook out and do fireworks and dress in red, white, and blue. We're not really celebrating." Don't allow people to spoil you by following these things, the traditions of men, and not following after Christ. Triple call Sapar in the building. How about you? All right, so he gets into it now. He says, "What to the American slave is your 4th of July?" I answer, "A day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and I believe that's what would be cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgiving, with all your religious parade, are and solemnity are to him mere bombast, fraud, deceptions, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. That is an absolute true statement. These are crimes that have been committed against our people, against our nation. And they have no concern for it. They have no concern. They had no concern then, and it's important for us to understand that they have no concern for it now. They have no concern for the wickedness and the crimes and the rape and the unaliving and the destruction of Blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians. If they did, then no one would ask you, as a so-called Black man, Latino, or Native Indian, what are you going to do for the 4th? No one would ask you how your 4th of July was. If they had any shame in what their forefathers did, because that's the other thing they like to say, well, that wasn't me. That wasn't me. That was my forefather. That wasn't me. No one here alive owned slaves. That's what they want to say. Which we all know that they've benefited in one way, shape, or form. Every single nation has been a part of our destruction and captivity and benefited off of. But even if you remove that, if you just look at it for what it is, if you just, now, this is their history. The Declaration of Independence is their history. They're proud of it. But even somebody, I mean, how wicked do you have to be to fully understand the history and then ask someone whose ancestors were enslaved at the time, what you going to do for the 4th? How was your 4th of July? They have absolutely no care, no concern, no shame. And we're so destroyed as a people, we just want to be accepted by them. So we'll come and participate. We want to participate. We can't wait as Black folks to go see some fireworks. In our minds, we are absolute what is it? What's the word? We are absolute specialists at demolition and everything that has to deal with fire. And what's the word I'm looking for? Y'all tell me. Pyro something. What is that word? It's gonna bother me till I figure it out. Oh, that's gonna bother me. Who can tell me what that word is? When you're a pyro specialist. Pyro specialist. Is that what it is? Technics? Pyrotechnician. I think that's what I was looking for. Pyrotechnician. I think that's what I was looking for. Either way, point still stands. Thank you, the water, because that was gonna bother me. But yeah, when it's 4th of July, listen, we like to go get the biggest and the most of everything we can, because we are going to have we're gonna light the whole block up as if we're really trying to reenact what that stood for, right? Because we can. We are going to do that everywhere. We're going to be the most. We're going to be the most extra everywhere until somebody gets hurt. Until we're going to have a whole box over here. We don't know what we're doing, so we're going to drop the wrong thing in there, and the whole box is going to explode. Some child is going to get hurt, all because we're trying to celebrate a holiday, a tradition that has nothing to do with it. We're happy to celebrate a tradition now that we would have died for if we tried to celebrate it then. But because we can, let's go. It says there is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. He goes on. He says, "Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies, and despotisms of the old world. Travel through South America, search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of this nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival." That is absolutely true. America and this wicked kingdom is the worst on the planet. This government in this country goes all across the world, spreading what they claim to be as democracy. They're spreading democracy. They're trying to help people. That's what they say. And they do this through bombs and bullets. That's how they do it. They essentially go over to someone else's home and tell them how they need to run it. And if they don't listen, then you just got to go. And we'll put somebody else in charge. That's how arrogant this oppressor is. That is why so many nations on this planet are waiting for the downfall of Babylon. They're going to participate in it. And that's why we as so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians need to make sure we come into this truth so that we can get the protection of the Most High by following these laws, statutes, and commandments. And not celebrating these traditions, these holidays that are about the oppressor's independence from his brothers, essentially. Sister says, terrible, demonic, and disgusting what the oppressors are doing. Absolutely. It's absolutely disgusting, and it's written in a way that you don't know whether that's 200 years ago or now, 250 years ago or now, because they continue these wicked crimes. All right, so we're gonna keep going. I found this. Did I skip too much? Hold on. Oh, this is also. I almost forgot. I skipped down too fast. Sloppy. Okay. Sloppy. Try and get there. I didn't do that well at all. Good night. Okay. So here, this is something that I did not know. There was a time in this country's history where they talked about two slave trades: the foreign slave trade and the internal slave trade. The foreign slave trade was still coming out of Africa, the west coast of Africa, and that had been outlawed globally. The internal slave trade was where they continued to keep us as slaves. They continued to, have us, have children, and our children had to be slaves, and there was no way out of it. So they attempted to make sure that there was a distinction drawn between the foreign slave trade and the internal slave trade. And again, this just shows the hypocrisy of this oppressor and why we need to make sure we don't fall in line with these traditions. It says it is carried on, meaning the foreign slave trade. It's carried on, meaning the internal slave trade. It says it's carried on in all the large towns and cities, and in one half of this confederacy. And millions are pocketed every year by dealers of this horrid traffic. In several states, this trade is the chief source of wealth. And in several states, it was a chief source of wealth, but all across this country, it was high up there. Even though it might not have been the chief one in every state, it was definitely high up there. And this is what this oppressor doesn't want us to know when they say things like, well, not everybody owns slaves. Not everybody owns slaves. It was only I think it was something like 30% is what the percentage was. So they say that in a way like it's supposed to be, again, like it's flippant. I won't even that many people. That's like saying everybody doesn't work at Walmart. But everybody has an impact of Walmart. Most people there's some impact on their daily lives for Walmart. Slavery in this country was big business, and it's still big business. Everybody benefited from it in one way, shape, or form. All right, but it goes on. It says, this is talking about the foreign slave trade. It says that trade has long since been denounced by this government as piracy, the foreign slave trade. It says to arrest it, to put it to an end to it, this nation keeps a squadron at immense cost on the coast of Africa. So at this time, America had soldiers on the west coast of Africa to stop the foreign slave trade. Why would they have been so invested to stop the foreign slave trade? Who can give me some ideas as to why that would have been a big deal for them? Why would they have invested to stop the foreign slave trade? Now, they already had slave trade going on here, the internal slave trade. It's almost a self-sufficient system at that point. What would have been the benefit of stopping the rest of the world? Who wants to give it a shot? All right. Officer Yagadar said they wanted to control the slave trade for themselves. Yes, but take that thought a little further. Why? There you go. Give them a hand. To keep them as the number one superpower by eliminating the competition. Meaning the competition, meaning this. If nobody else has the ability to take advantage of slave labor the way we do, then we are at an advantage. That's what America said. We need to make sure we tamp this down everywhere else. We have it running well. It's a well-oiled machine over here. We don't even need to get any more people from Africa. All we have to do is keep up these people enslaved and keep them having babies. So yes, y'all can stop that. Matter of fact, we'll help y'all stop it. Because we want to make sure that we are the sole beneficiaries of this, type of labor, this slave labor. Everybody else, yeah. Now that we've established it, everybody else can stop. What does that come? That it's very similar to something else that this oppressor did and continues to do. It's one of those things that is like, once I get this set up, once I'm good, then nobody else needs to participate. Nobody else needs to take advantage of this. Who can give me another example of that? That is going on today and is a relatively hot topic for their people, for the oppressor's people. Absolutely. Give Officer Yagadar a hand. They rigged the game and then changed the rules. It's exactly what they do. And they have a history of it. That's part of their method of operation. That's part of their method of operation. But what's another example? Affirmative action. Let me think. That's not the one I was thinking of. Perhaps. That's what I'm saying. Maybe. They pulled a Clarence Thomas on the slave train. God, I get what you're saying. That's not the one I was thinking about, but I get what you're saying. I think there's another one that's a little more blatant, a little more clear. Welfare, that's a good example. It's probably multiple examples. That's a good one. Because they set that up and then they act like it was all us. That is absolutely a good one. Matter of fact, they set it up and then they made sure they impoverished our neighborhoods and communities. And then when we took advantage of it, they said that we were, lazy and then calling our women crack mothers and the fathers were no good. All of that. Guns, gold. I'm not sure what you mean there, Officer Yagadar. So for the sake of time, I was guns, gold, drugs. These are all things that they pump. Yes, absolutely. Think about there was a time where they described this country, the oppressor. So like the oppressor described this country as a nation of what? I want y'all, somebody gonna give it to me. They describe the people here. They describe the citizens as a nation of blank. Not farmers. Think about how the country began. Yeah, not farmers. Think about how the country began. Uh, no, not patriots either. Maybe I'm not asking the question right. Let me see another way I can ask it. Okay, I'm gonna walk y'all there. I know somebody's gonna get this. I'm gonna walk y'all there. All right. None of our oppressors are from here. They're from somewhere else, which makes them what? Once they come here, not free. I mean, they are. That's what they describe themselves. But no, that's not it either. Give Officer Yagadar a hand. Immigrants. They describe themselves as a nation of immigrants. They used to say it a lot until who can give it to me? It used to be a mantra of theirs. I think it's the Statue of Liberty that says something. I don't know specifically, but it says something like, send us your poor and your downtrodden and all that. Send those people to us. Send the immigrants to us. They were only talking about certain people. There we go. William said a melting pot. That's another answer. But yeah, Officer Yagadar was definitely more on it. Right. They were all Europeans. Exactly. And as long as everybody was coming from Europe, then y'all come on. These are all immigrants, though. And it's no problem. And as Officer Yagadar said, give them a hand. Now they want to keep folks out. But who do they want to keep out? It's not everybody. Get a brother a hand. Until so-called Mexicans and Haitians and the Israelites wanted to now start making their way to this country. Now it's a problem. Just like they had no problem with the slave trade until they established their system. They established the system that worked well for them. They started seeing all the benefits. You know what? We can't have everybody having this. Everybody can't take advantage of this. We need to keep this for ourselves. We need to make sure you know what? It's right. It's wrong now. It's wrong. Y'all are absolutely right. It's wrong to take, people from one continent to another. It's right from their perspective at the time, but we can still enslave them. We just can't go get them. And they didn't need to. And it's the same thing with the immigration. Once they came over here, established their country, now they're independent. You fast forward, now we have this society established, and you know what? We need to tamp down on this immigration. We I don't know about all these. And I tell you what else. Right. Selective immigration. Exactly. That's where it is now. And this is the other thing. A lot of the discussion is about, as Officer Yagadar said, Mexicans and Haitians, right? Those coming up from Latino countries. But this is a fact. Most of the people who overstay their visas, who are here and shouldn't be, who can tell me where they come from? Now, these things are documented. You get a visa to come in, it's valid for a minute, for a certain period of time. And then when it runs out, if you don't get it renewed, you're supposed to go back home. And a lot of people just stay. Where do those people come from? Does anybody know? It's a good guess, but it's not Asian, not the majority of them. There's a majority of them that come from a particular country, not Asians. Right. Right. Now, their favorite line is to tell somebody to go back to their country, go back to where they came from. But in their minds, they're where they're from because that's just what they think. It's in their minds. This is mine now, so I don't have to go back anywhere. I'm no longer an immigrant in their minds. They're no longer immigrants. Everybody else is. Everybody else who's so-called Black, Latino, and Native Americans, all of you all are immigrants. So, Sister Na says, Africa. All right, my rib says, I think it's supposed to be India. Okay, now think about this. You all are giving great answers, and they all make sense, right? And it all proves that you guys are thinking the right way. I got the spirit right now because all of these countries, all of these regions or whatever, people can come over from there all day long, and it's no problem. Absolutely no problem. They don't have any problem with Asians coming. They don't have any problem with Africans coming over. They don't got any problems with folks coming from India. All of those people can come, and it's no problem at all. But when our brothers try to come up from these, Central and South American countries and Mexico, oh, that's a problem. That's too much. Now you're ruining society and all this other nonsense, which is the proof that we are the children of Israel. It's the proof that we are the nation who was not desired. Salaki, the answer, though, is actually Canada. There are more people who come in this country from Canada overstay their visas than anywhere in the world. Nobody ever talks about that because Canada is predominantly European. So you're going to hear about it even less. But that's the method of operation. They set the system up, they get it established for them, and they change the game and say, okay, nobody else can do this. Where was I? Oh, it says it is, however, a notable fact, while so much execration is poured out by Americans upon those who engage in the foreign slave trade, the men engaged in the slave trade between states pass without condemnation, and their business is deemed honorable. Meaning hey, listen, y'all can't do that's wrong for y'all now. But we're fine. We're okay to keep doing this. We're not pirates. It's not disgusting. That's the mentality. That's why we say the oppressor is the devil that the Bible speaks of. Devil just means deceit. That is a deceitful presentation. It's hypocrisy. It's absolute. You want me to believe that what you're doing is okay only because you're benefiting from it. That's their whole method of operation. It's like you were obviously Rashomon said, to celebrate the 4th of July is cruel. You are sacrificing the suffering of others for your own pleasure, while your people are independent and not free. You're celebrating the 4th. Exactly. Come on. It's a disregard for your people. It's a disregard for your family. It's a disregard for the wickedness that this kingdom not only did but continues to do. The idea that you're going to celebrate the 4th of July and do set off fireworks and barbecue and have this wonderful time, knowing that when this started, when they first had their 4th of July, our people were still enslaved, knowing that even now our people are continuously destroyed. We're going to celebrate, quote unquote, independence. It's an absolute disregard for your people. All right. Where are we at time? Okay, I gotta skip forward. This is talking about, it says, attending the auction, see men examined like horses. This is talking about the internal, quote unquote, internal slave trade. See the forms of women rudely and brutally exposed in the shocking gaze of American slave buyers. This is just, again, we know that there were auctions. We know that we were viewed as cattle, viewed as just property. So this talks about the wickedness that this oppressor was so comfortable with, while they were celebrating their independence. They were so comfortable treating us like absolute less than human, worse than probably their family pet, and at the same time celebrating what's supposedly their independence. It's like the sister said, Egypt, Iraq, China, and Canada, they want here. They don't want no Hebrews. Exactly. They don't. They do and they don't. They don't want us to succeed, but they don't want us to go away either. So never believe that. We run this economy, and as soon as if we were to ever get our minds right, as we continue to come back to these laws, statutes, and commandments, we would destroy, we would cripple this country. They just want us here as they've always had us, as pawns, as tools, as a resource for them. Middle finger to the ancestors. That's exactly what it is. It's a straight middle finger to the ancestors. It's a complete disregard for our people to continue celebrating 4th of July as if it's something that we should be happy about in any way, shape, or form. All right. We keep going. Who's heard of the Mason-Dixon line? And who knows what that is? I'm going to have to glaze over some of this. Just give y'all, not read it, but give y'all the backstory. Y'all gonna say we had to make them feel comfortable, then we choose to show our teeth and make them comfortable today. Right. Because so many of us don't. I don't think so many of us don't even want to know the history of it. There are so many of us who want to disregard the history that and the cruelty that our people went through because they're able to do so now. They feel like they are in their mind. They're able to be like, well, that's old. And it's a big middle finger to our ancestors, and it's attempt to just go along. And what they used to say, go along to get along, that's what it is. It's weak. It is a weak position to take for your people. And that's why they don't respect us. Okay, a lot of sister she has not heard of Mason-Dixon line. All right. Let me have to glaze on this real quick. Shalaki. Which one did that pull up? That's not what I wanted. Doing too much. All right. So there were two things he was addressing. All right. It says, but still more inhuman, meaning he's already talked about the disgusting things that this country is doing. It says, disgraceful and scandalous state of things remain to be presented by an act of the American Congress not 2 years ago, not 2 years old. Slavery has been nationalized in its most horrible and revolting form. By the act, Mason-Dixon line has been obliterated. New York has become as Virginia, and the power to hold, hunt, sell men, women, and children as slaves remains no longer a mere state institution, but is now the institution of the whole United States. Now, Officer Rao Shema says all of these immigrants coming from China, Canada, or whatever, they wouldn't have had that opportunity if it wasn't for Black people fighting for rights and opportunities. Khan give them a hand. That is absolutely right. This country, as it is, opportunity period, only exists because of our people building it, because of our people creating it. because of our people making this kingdom what it is. That's why there's so much opportunity here. And then the Civil Rights Act and the Civil Rights Movement was passed, but it was passed it was executed in a way that gave all of these other nations the benefit. It's just like everybody's a so-called minority, except essentially for white men. So when you have these minority benefits, some of the first ones they go to are the female white women. That's some of the, because they're considered minorities. And then it might trickle down to all these other nations, as Officer Yaraj said. They all reap the benefits based on our efforts and what we do. But, so this act, the Mason-Dixon line, I'm going to try to speed this up. So the whole thing about the Mason-Dixon line was there was an agreement at one point that slavery, quote unquote, wouldn't happen in states above the Mason-Dixon line, which is a certain latitude and longitude or whatever in the country, right? And it kind of separated the North from the South, okay? And in that, and this is, I didn't even notice until today, even the way the country continued to expand, slavery was such a big deal for this country. And it's so interesting why people say, well, that was so long ago. It was such a big deal for this country. It dictated how they brought states into the Union. Meaning, because there was so much controversy, so-called controversy between North and South, and again, it was not over slavery, it was really over the economics of it, okay? It wasn't about, oh, we're so worried about all those black people and Latino people y'all got enslaved, these Native American people. It was about, y'all are a powerhouse down there because of that slave institution that y'all have, and we have an issue with it from the North's perspective because it was an economic thing. But it was such a big deal that the way they introduced new states, they only wanted to introduce a non-slave state with a slave state at the same time to keep the balance in the country. That went on for a while. So when people say, oh, that was a long time ago, it is so ingrained in the history of this country. We need to make sure as Blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians that we don't forget it, and then we pass it down to our children, and that we make sure we're teaching it, which is why we do that in the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. We teach the history. We have to make sure we know it so people don't allow it to be lost, and our people be even more lost because of it. All right. Yagadah said, even in our lower state, we make the world better for everyone. Exactly. We're gonna be glorious in rulership. Yeah, I'm right. But yeah, that was the Mason-Dixon line. So what eventually ended up happening was, I'm trying to get to this. Okay, it's a big gap because he was talking all about how they weren't that bad. Okay, where you at? Oh, no. I don't remember. You know what? Scratch that. I gotta go to them. So the Mason-Dixon line, right? And so at around 1948, right? That's I'm sorry, 1848. That's in 1948. Around 1848, there was that's when the gold rush happened. Some of y'all maybe have heard of that, remember that from school. There was a whole gold rush in California. So because there was this gold rush in California, America decided they wanted to bring California on quickly. They didn't want to do the whole even thing. We need to make sure we can go get the gold, which again, we know this country's whole MO is about money. So because there's this gold over there, forget all this deal we had. We need to go get California now. So when that happened from the southern states' perspective, they were like, well, wait a minute. Y'all trying to take advantage. So then here comes the compromise. of 1850. It says the compromise was necessitated by the U.S. annexation of territory stretching from Texas to California after the Mexican-American War. Because what initially happened was America goes to Mexico and says, we want to buy all this land, all the land that they got, right? That eventually became the United States. And Mexico was like, nah, we ain't interested in that. Props to them. So what does the president of the United States do at the time? He sets up a post as deep in Texas as he can, which is basically an encroachment on their territory. So, of course, they got a choice to make at this point because you're kind of flexing in our spot. Can't have that. They go to war. Esau's blessed with the sword. 2 years goes by. Mexico says, okay, we got to fall back. All right. They fall back, sell the property like at half of what they initially offered them. Because, of course, now that I beat you in war, I don't have to yesterday's price is not today's price, right? So they only gave them like half, and so that's how the expansion happened, partially through war and then forced negotiations, essentially. So then there was all these agreements that you couldn't have because they didn't want, again, because of economics, they didn't want slavery to expand. They wanted to stay where it is. So we're gonna get California, but we're not gonna do another state. So what you had was you can get California because of gold. What you had a couple years after that was the Compromise of 1850, sought to pacify the South in several ways. The admission of California was balanced by the fact that Utah and New Mexico were territories that could determine on their own whether they were going to be slave states or not, and because that's not a big deal. Who's heard of the fugitive slave law? Who's heard of that? Kanala. The fugitive slave law. Okay. Officer Yagadar is familiar. Who else? The fugitive slave law. All right. I letters from that. All right. All right, we're gonna keep going now. I mean, we're still gonna go over it. I was not familiar, so most high in Christ to y'all. So, as part of this compromise, so the fugitive the fugitive slave law essentially ruled that fugitive slaves or slaves who had escaped into free northern states were still subject to southern slave laws. They could be legally recaptured and returned to the South as slaves. Okay. So that's how you born 12 years a slave got caught up, I think. All right. Come on, the water for that. So yeah, because there was a time where the whole mission was to get to the north, get to New York, get to Boston, get to Pennsylvania, get to these northern states, because once you hit the state, you were free. So now this law says no. Now, anybody who's up there, we find out they're up there, then y'all gotta return them because they're still slaves at that point. So okay, we may not be able to expand slavery, but we can go get some of the people we lost. Cool, yeah, we're gonna do that then. We're gonna do that. It says, moreover, the law contained conspicuously corrupt provisions, such as those that denied accused fugitive slaves the right to testify in their own defense or the right to a trial by jury. Instead, the law appointed commissioners to oversee the trials who were compensated $5 for freeing a fugitive, but $10 for returning one to the South. Now, how wicked can you be to set up a situation where you incentivize the returning of a slave? I can make more money by sending the slaves back. Right, very similar. Very similar for ICE. Exactly. Very similar for ICE, which was another system set up to then combat something that they had been doing for years. We're all immigrants. Everybody come from another country. Blah 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 blah. Once they got over here and set it up, you know what? We need an immigration task force. We need, what is it? I forgot what it stands for. Immigration something enforcement. I forgot. But now we need a whole agency to make sure we combat the same immigration that we took advantage of. And it was the same thing back then. We need an agency. We need a commissioner who's going to oversee these tribes. And we're going to give him more money to return, so-called return the slave. Now, these are all things that were going on years and years after. This is what, 75 years after the Declaration of Independence. These things were still going on, and our people, even now, are still excited about celebrating the 4th of July. We have been used, Israelites have been used as pawns and free labor in this country since its inception, and we continue to be used that way. I read something earlier that it said George Washington didn't even want black people, period. Blacks, Latinos, Native Indians. He didn't want anybody but white people in the army. Any army when they were going through the Revolutionary War, because strategically this makes sense. He didn't want to give all us guns. And then we jump on the other folks' side. Who does that sound like? Who does that sound like? Real quick. Okay, the oppressor. I don't have a. It's not exactly wrong. I'm looking for something very specific. Here it is. Who can tell me what George Washington sounded like? He didn't want to enlist black folks in the military because he didn't want us to get guns and then jump on the side of the bridge. Who does that sound like biblically? Who want to give it a shot? Who else want to give it a shot? Who else in the Bible was? There we go. They've obviously got to die. It sounds like Pharaoh. Exactly. Exodus 1 and 10 says, "Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And it come to pass that when there falleth out in any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us. And so get them up out of the land." This is Egypt all over again. And this oppressor thinks the same way our oppressor in Egypt felt. Now, that was George Washington's first instinct, right? So then what did the British do? Who can tell me? Because George Washington saying, "Can't none of y'all come to the land. Y'all might join with the enemy." So what did Britain do? Britain said, "No problem. Hey, look, y'all, if y'all want to be free, come fight for us." And of course, that's what we did. Then George Washington said, "Nah, y'all can come on." Right. Give officer y'all can die and promise freedom for slaves that fought for them. That's exactly what they did. And then right after that, George Washington said, "Okay, you know what? I was just joking." Because even then, right, they used us. Exactly. Even then, though, something similar happened, if y'all remember when we talked about the Civil War. We have been used as pawns in every aspect of this country's history. We were used to fight for their freedom from their so-called oppressor because they had to pay some taxes. All the while, we were absolutely enslaved, destroyed, brutalized as a people. I think the majority of folks who so-called the so-called founding fathers who signed the Declaration of Independence, most of them were slave owners. We have been a turning point for all wars we won. They were, for all the wars. All the wars we won for them. I heard General Muhammad say there's no one more patriotic than blacks, Latinos, and Native Indians to this country. Us celebrating 4th of July is another example of that. The history that goes into it is another example of that. We freely give our lives, historically and currently, to an oppressor that despises us, that cares nothing about us. We freely give ourselves to this oppressor. We typically want this oppressor's love so much that we'll forsake our brothers. As Officer Uriah said earlier, it's cruel to celebrate this. It's disrespectful to our ancestors to have a cookout on the 4th of July or for the 4th of July. It's the biggest disregard for your family. People talk about oftentimes, right? You hear people talk about, especially when they believe in voting, right? We don't vote in here. But oftentimes the argument that people make is, well, you know how many people died for your right to vote? And they look at you like you're so wrong. You know how many people died and were still enslaved during the 4th of July? But yet you have no disregard, you have no concern for celebrating that? Because you have been spoiled by vain deceit and the traditions of men. Forced or by ignorance. You mean us participating in the wars? Sis, I think that's where you're going. But no one has any regard for this wicked tradition that our oppressor keeps. This disgusting tradition that our oppressor keeps. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not disgusting to them. Knock yourself out. But anybody who's an Israelite who is of the so-called Black, Latino, or Native Indian, no, stay completely out of that. You're spitting on your ancestors. You're joining with another nation. And we look at it like it's something small. It's just a cookout. It's just convenient for us to get together on the day that everybody's off. And this is why we can't come, why so many of us have problems coming back to the law, statutes, and commandments. Because we don't get to go to that celebration. Nah, we're good. We're good over here. We're good over here. We don't need to go to that. We understand that if we go to that, we might as well, again, it's just so disrespectful to your ancestors. It's cruel. It's selfish. We understand that, so no, we don't need to come over here. But when you look at it like it's not a big deal, when you don't understand or don't care about the history of it all, and that's what gets lost too, because so many of us don't care. We don't want to think about it. So we can go and have that fun. So then it's lost. And as time goes on, people aren't going to teach it to their children. The truth about it. And over a period of time, it's like over a long enough time, you'll have our people thinking that was something for us. Or at best, it'll be, well, we celebrate both of them. We celebrate that and Juneteenth. So, it's the worst. It's the absolute worst. All right. That. I want to say. This goes to what Officer Yagadar was saying. 12 Years a Slave. I actually have not watched that movie, so I'm not sure exactly sure what the plot is. But it said Northern free blacks were particularly alarmed that the law did not contain allowances for those blacks who were not escaped slaves. Blacks who had lived their entire lives as free citizens could easily be captured and quote unquote returned to a slavery they had never before experienced. Thousands of free blacks and fugitive slaves fled to Canada, no longer secure in the protection of the free states. But again, this oppressor was not concerned about how this was going to play out for us. This is a pawn to be used in a negotiation. They sat down at a table. One of them said, "Look, I'm trying to go get this gold out of California." I'm like, nah, I can't have that because that's gonna mess up the equilibrium we got going here. Well, I tell you what, how about any slaves that you lost, you can go get them. That was essentially the negotiation. We are commerce to our oppressor. Anybody who has it in their mind that these oppressors care about you at all, that they're not that bad, so on and so forth. Sure, all of us probably have them on our slavery, and they seem okay. And they are for what they are. Meaning they're just a coworker. That's it. You don't have to give anything else. You don't have to assimilate, acclimate. You don't have to feel you need to give in to any of this. We are called to separate, to be separate. Matter of fact, Revelation 18:4 says, "And I heard another voice from heaven saying, 'Come out of her, my people.'" Her is America. How do you come out of her? You come into class. You get in the ISUPK under Command General Yohana. You start following these laws, statutes, and commandments. You stop celebrating these traditions and holidays that has nothing to do with you. If you are a black, so-called black, Latino, and Native Indian. This scripture is talking directly to you. So you come out of this wicked society and this wicked country by removing yourself from its holidays, from its traditions. It says, "Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins." That's our problem. We take on the spirit and the traditions and the holidays of this oppressor. It's a sin for us to do these things. It's against the law. We are not allowed to do these things. We are supposed to follow the law, statutes, and commandments given to us by the Most High. It says in Psalms, these were not given to any other nation. So no other nation knows the Most High's judgments. It's only us, which is why we have to deal with the things that we have to deal with. That's why we have to deal with the oppression. That's why we have to deal with the crime. That's why we have to deal with the drugs. That's why we have to deal with the impoverished communities. That's why we have to deal with our children being taken from us. Whether it be to foster care, whether it be to CPS, whether it be because they were locked up in dog cages on the border. These are the things that we have to deal with. These are the things that we suffer because these are the judgments of the Most High for not following his laws, statutes, and commandments. It says, "And receive ye not of her plagues." The only way we cannot receive the plagues that are going to come down on this nation is to make sure that we have the cover of the Most High. And the only way we get that is by following the law, statutes, and commandments as we were commanded to do. Without doing that, all of these curses will continue to fall on us. We just showed how the same type of disposition that Pharaoh had when we were in Egypt, George Washington had the same disposition here. Sister says, "Yeah, I think she mean I was just at the store and not one black man black women, all buying cookout food with the oppressor on their arms. Well, damn. Well, damn. This is what we have to fight against. This is what we have to fight against, so that we can get back on the side of the Most High. Good night. All the oppressors of Slovakia, all the brothers there as pets to this oppressor, because that's how we're looked at by them. We are looked at as pets to them, something to be shown off. Similar to if you you know how you feel if you get a little puppy, you want everybody to see the little puppy. That's the way they deal with us. That's the perspective that they have for us. And they're gonna go and light all these fireworks and have this cookout and celebrate their oppressors' independence. Damn shame. All right, with that, we're gonna go over the security announcements real quick. Slovakia. Right, we had the ISUPK started out of 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York. Rule for a new brother or sister. When a new brother or sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to shed themselves of the world. If they need transportation, camp leader will arrange it. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the camp leader to speak to a brother or sister. There's another 6 months in which the brother and sister will court each other. After this 6 month period, the brother and sister will get permission from the head to marry. Tithes, which is a commandment, is found in Numbers 18 and 21 and Malachi 3, verses 8 through 10. It means the 10th in Hebrew is ma'ashara, the 10th of every penny of any increase the Lord gives you. You give to, it says the Treasury Department of Teaching, but you can also go on ISUPK.com and you can pay your tithes directly there. It will also allow you to track it. Obviously, you'll get your email responses and things of that nature, so you can track it that way. Priest fund. Free will offering for the priest is not mandatory. Whatsoever amount you would like. It's just whatever amount you would like. Upcoming high holy days or holy convocation. I believe it is the blowing of the memorial, the feast of blowing of trumpets. That's on September 15th. And if anyone wants to be a trooper in the school, you need to be in all black, which is boots, shirts, pants, headband, and war scar. All right. And with that, I say Shalom Yahweh Hashem Shabbat Thumb to the brothers. Shalom Yahweh Shalom Yahweh Shemar Alathun by Hashem Yahweh Shah to the sisters. Class dismissed.